Oppenheimer was brought up in a privileged place. His father actually was a man who imported fabric from Europe at that time, and he had great resources. So Oppenheimer was always exposed to the finest things in life, the finest of luggage, fabric, places to live, was not really without anything. But what he was a very fragile soul that actually indicated what his suitings would look like. His style, the shape and the silhouette of his style did not change from the 20s to the 60s. However, it always looked different, and there was a different drape to it depending on his weight and his fragility of his soul. Everything was very carefully calculated and chosen. When he puts the hat on and picks up the pipe, it was all calculated. He knew what he needed to do to present himself, aside from being a ladies' man. I mean, ladies loved him. He was just absolutely gorgeous to them. And what was fascinating about it is that you had to make choices in design that would not look purposeful, but be purposeful at the same time. The thing about all of these iconic costumes, which is I always find fascinating, is that when we design these costumes, we don't know they're going to become iconic. We don't know that it's going to set a trend. We don't know what is going to happen. We are really just designing and actually filling the character in a way that the material has presented. This is very hard work. It's very demanding work. And it makes a lot of money. And it influences a lot of people, which is, wonderful. But I think we should actually be recognized for that and be paid accordingly.
I look at the films and the things that we do, and I see how much of the frame is costume, and I see how much it informs the piece. And I think some adjustments need to be made in the industry to proportionate to how much we fill that frame and tell that story.
Maestro, part of what makes the film work so well, in my opinion, is it's very much of a time and place. And part of that is definitely the costumes. It puts you where you are with the Bernsteins and with that world of New York at that time.
Fortunate enough to do 40 years of a person's life from the 40s to the late 80s. A lot of changes socially. Palettes changed, length of skirts, shoulders, and we're using all of that to tell a story and to give signposts of a life well lived.
Mark, can you tell us a little bit about these suits, the designs, the ideas, and what they represent in terms of the eras?
Yeah, the one on the left, that is 1976 or 7. Very different. I found a prototype suit that I fell in love with at Motion Picture. I hoped it would work on him, but we copied all the details. I just love the bellows pockets and the action back and the half belt in the back, and then chose a shirt color that speaks about his lifestyle at the time, but also was very much in style. Of course, you have to play with the width of the neckties to tell you everything where you are in a timeline.
When we started, Yara was 17. Look at her now, and you can see a huge difference. And we're getting ready. We have 3 shows left, which is kind of bittersweet. And she's grown. She's 24. She's out of Harvard. And her clothes have changed, from being sweatsuits and things like that when we first started. And we had an ensemble of 11 actors to dress with 10 to 12 changes a show. It's been a challenge. You learn a lot from these kids, a lot. Chloe, who's with Beyonce, Hallie, who's with Beyonce, they know fashion. So you really do learn a lot about the street, what's really cool on the streets. And they taught me a lot about that, because this is not street. And so I always believe that every chapter you do takes you to the next chapter. So when you think that you're stuck right now, you're not. You're going to keep going. So it was an experience. And then when I did commercials, I did In Living Color. And then from there, that took me on to do Bernie Mac and other great shows. I was not a comedy. I wanted to be a costume designer that did Broadway. So I don't know how I got into comedy. I'm not funny, but I love television. It's my format. I don't want to do anything else. And so I love it.
As all of us do, we start with the character on the page, and then you use, or I use, part imagination, part research, part what I see people wearing in everyday life, and, you know, comparisons with other people in that job. And then it's just all of those things come together, you know, ultimately in the fitting room, along with direction from the showrunners and the directors and the actors themselves. And then it just happens in the fitting room, for me anyway. We always had an issue with Reese when she needed suits for the show, because we're not a made-to-order show. We don't build. We shop, we source, we find. And, you know, she's very little. And we were coming out of this oversized suiting moment on the first season, and it was always a struggle to find what we needed in time when we got the scripts. And then Reese's stylist, Petra Flannery, was like, oh, you should meet these guys at Lafayette. So I was like, okay, cool. And we went for breakfast, and it was just one of those things that just worked really well for everybody. So it was an organic meet. And then we were at that point in the show where Reese's character, she's now the evening news anchor. So we needed to elevate her.
American Fiction is not a period piece, but in a sense it is a period piece, in a sense, because it captures a time and place in America. You have also done things like The Alienist, which very much showed a particular type of American silhouette. How, working on a show like that, how does that help to inform you when it comes to working on something like American Fiction?
The bottom line is, and especially with this film, but kind of overall, unless it's a fantasy film, or at least I always try and approach design with having things be rooted in reality. Cord Jefferson, who wrote and directed the film, he wanted the film to look and feel timeless. So you could watch it 10 years ago today or 10 years from now, and, you know, it's almost like the clothes are secondary. So it was less about making them costumes and more about just being rooted in reality. Like Ellen taught me, you do as best you can with little money. I mean, we had no money. I think my budget for the whole movie was 30 grand all in, which, you know, 30 grand is a lot of money, but not when you have, you know, 60 characters to dress. Like that blue suit you see over there, like that's like $60 from Zara on the clearance rack. But, you know, you put it on Adam Brody and he's, you know, all of a sudden.
I don't think that outfit that Issa was wearing cost $60.
No, $20. I mean, God bless Issa Rae, but yeah.